That was a really great introduction. I appreciate it. Like she said, my name is Teale, like the color. I know it's a funny name, but I was born with it, so we're going to go with it. More importantly, I am here today because I want to give you guys real-life application tools. I want skills. I want things you can take back and put into practice today with your clients. Specifically for those clients who are stuck, or for those clients who are on their 4th pregnancy and still smoking, or for those clients who have tried to quit over and over and over again, and now what? They're coming to you because you're the expert. You tell me what to do. That's really specifically where these types of tools are going to come in. So before we get started, I want to tell you right now, I am not here to tell you how to do your job. You are the experts. I was listening to you when you were introducing yourselves. Collectively, we have hundreds of years of experience sitting in this room. There are so many things you are already doing correct today. Chrissy shared with you that 82% of your clients are quitting smoking, are cutting back, and abstaining completely. 82%. 8 out of 10 of your women are making a change. So again, I say that because what I really want you to do is take back what works for you. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to throw so much more at you than you could possibly handle. And I'm doing it on purpose. Because I want you to take whatever works, and whatever doesn't work, that's fine, leave it behind. This is the same model I use with my clients, because some things are going to work and some aren't, and that's okay. So I'm going to jump back to the data really quickly that Chrissy was talking about, because like she said, there are a lot of things that we can't control, that we can't impact. How old is she? Is she married? What is her level of education? Is she going to school? We can't control that, okay? And so I'm not really going to focus on it. What I am going to focus on is the things that we can have an impact on, because there are a lot of things that we can change. And so these are the specific things that we're going to talk about today. Number one is the relationship that you already have with your clients. You are already the frontline defense. Like I said, when they get to me, they've already worked with you. They've already made a change. Number two is participant attitudes, how they feel about it. I know there are a lot of women who, when they come to you, they might not even know if they want to quit smoking. You might be the first person who's ever said, hey, do you want to? Did you know you're capable of it? You can actually increase a woman's ability to have confidence in herself just through the one-on-one that she has. Number three, and this is going to be a really big one today, the number of coping skills. I don't know if you were listening to Chrissy, but she told you that if a woman gains even one coping skill in the time that she works with you, it increases her ability to quit smoking by 8%. That is a huge number, 8%, just by gaining one coping skill. Because the reality is, smoking is a coping skill. It's just a bad one. So what are we going to replace it with? And then the last one is stressors. And I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to talk a lot about stress. Again, Chrissy said, it's the number one trigger. It's the number one reason that women start smoking. It's the number one reason women keep smoking. And it's the number one reason that it makes it hard for women to quit smoking. So I want to talk about it, because the reality is, this is going to sound crazy, but stress can actually have a positive impact on a woman's ability to quit smoking. It's all about how we frame the conversation. I wanted to add this because I literally stole these words out of Chrissy's mouth. We don't think that stress can have a positive impact on a woman's ability to quit, but it does, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. So here's what we learned. Addressing root causes, those are called triggers, the things that make her want to smoke, and making changes in personal areas of her life, literally anything, it doesn't even need to be her smoking. It can be anything at all, will improve her quit attempt. Because if she can make a change in any area of her life, do you know what it means? It proves that she can make a change, period. And that's what we're going to talk about. Because the reality is, it builds self-efficacy. And I'm going to get into self-efficacy. I'm going to define it for you. So I'm going to set that piece aside, because this is really what we're talking about. Strengths, coping, and stressors. That's what this conversation is about. The reality is, these women are already coming in because they have personal strengths. Walking through the door, that's a strength. Deciding that they're willing to be honest about the fact that they smoke while they're pregnant, that's a strength. Admitting the fact that they need help, that's a strength. Admitting the fact that they're struggling with it, that's a strength. Those are strengths. I look at those as positive things. Let's build on that. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. That's not our job. Our job is to figure out what they're doing correct and then to build on it. That's where coping skills come in. I saw a meme on Facebook recently, and it says, I've survived 100% of my bad days so far, and that's pretty good. And I was like, that is totally accurate. These women are already surviving. They are already dealing with life. But how are they doing it? That's what we have to figure out. What are the coping skills they already have? And then, how do we challenge them to grow that? And then the last thing is stressors. Because in my world, we need to be willing to talk about why they smoke. Because if we're going to make a plan on how to give up cigarettes, what are we going to do instead? Because otherwise, these women are going to quit, but then what do they have moving forward when that stress comes back or when it hits them? So that's what we're going to talk about. Let me start off by saying that I recognize that not everyone wants to go this in depth. And you know what? That's fine. If you have the client who comes in and they're like, well, you can't push them. If they're not ready to quit smoking, guess what? They're not going to quit smoking. That's not on you. And if you're one of those people where you're like, I am up to here and I just can't, guess what? That's okay too. Because this is about personalizing it for you and personalizing it for your clients. The reality is we're here because we want to help and not hurt. So I want to start actually by talking about you, because you are super important to this conversation. We would not be in this room if it weren't for the work that you're doing today. And you've been doing it for a long time. And the good news is there are so many things that you're doing that are already working, that are already helping your women quit smoking. Here's the thing about your relationship with your women. It makes them feel important. It makes them feel like a priority. How often in your life as a woman do you get to have a space where it's not about being a mom? It's not about being a wife. It's not about being a part of your community, where you get to be completely selfish and for 5 minutes in your day, it's about you. Think about it. When it comes to your personal life, does it feel good when you get to be the priority? It does. Like, as women, we like how that makes us feel. And the reality is that one-on-one time that you have with these women might be the only space in their life where they get to have that. And that's powerful. That's huge. Number 2, do you guys know what ACEs are? Adverse childhood experiences? Does anyone not know what ACEs are? Yay! Okay, so that's really great because you guys are already ahead of the game. Adverse childhood experiences was a research study, and what we did was we looked at those negative experiences during childhood. I'm going to call it trauma, okay? And we looked at that and we figured out what the long-term health consequences were later on in life. And what people were reporting was the more negative childhood experiences they had, the lower their self-reported health was later on in life. These women were saying, I feel sick. I don't feel like a healthy person. And there was a direct correlation. And there was a direct correlation to poverty. But here's the thing about ACEs. There's a really good thing that came from it. We figured out the number 1 protective factor. Do you know what it is? You. If a woman has even one positive, supportive, caring relationship in her life, it dramatically reduces the negative consequences of that trauma. A single relationship. That's all she needs. And you know what? That's you. You are that person. There are women where you might be the only person in her life that is a positive role model. And that's amazing. And again, it builds her resiliency. And resiliency, another one of those words that I'm going to come back to because of how important it is to the conversation. And the last thing, she may experience low, negative, or no social support. I know that working in Racine and Kenosha, I have a lot of women who live out in the country. I have women who are isolated. I have women who don't have any family here, or they have friends who don't support their quit attempt, who shame them for wanting to quit, who make them feel bad. And you know what? Am I supposed to say, yeah, divorce your husband? Make new friends? That just might not be realistic. And the thing is, you might be that person. In fact, I will say this, the number 1 most important thing when it comes to your relationship with your women is caring about them. I know it sounds really simple, but that's it. The ability to recognize that how they feel matters. Empathy, demonstrating that you care, was self-reported by these women as being the number 1 most important thing in their relationship with you. And I say this because I recognize that it sounds easy, but can be really difficult. What happens when you have no time? What happens when your caseload is up to the ceiling, right? How do you do that? How do you demonstrate that? I actually had a woman say to me, it can be so difficult. She said, for example, I have this one client where when she comes in, I try so hard and she tries so hard, and you know what? It's not enough. And by the end of it, I feel so bad, I want to give up and quit my job. Like, how are you asking me to care when it hurts to care? And I was like, well, what does it look like then for your next client? And she goes, I'll be really honest, at that point, I check out and I'm done. And I'm going, so this one negative experience is actually impacting your ability to care for the next person. She's like, yeah, totally. And I was like, did you take an adult timeout? And she's like, excuse me? And I'm like, oh, these are the best ever. So you guys know what a timeout is? I love timeouts. They are the greatest tool ever. So a lot of people think of timeouts as being like a punishment for your kid. Timeouts are awesome. And here's the thing, I think kids like them too because they like structure, they just don't realize it. But an adult timeout is specific to you. An adult timeout is your ability, that mindfulness thing, to check into yourself and go, I need to take a break right now because if I don't, I'm just gonna lose it. Or I'm gonna check out. And either way, that's not good for you and it's not good for your clients. And so here's what I said to her. What if you take a bathroom break? Grab your phone, play on Facebook. I don't really care what you do. Take 5 minutes, breathe. You don't even have to go to the bathroom. Just flush when you're done. No one's gonna question what you're doing in there. If you're 2 minutes late to meet with your client and you go, oh, I'm sorry, I had to go to the bathroom. These are pregnant women. They're gonna be like, oh, I get it. And you know what? Taking that 5-minute break for you might be what you need to recharge yourself to come back and care for the next person. So I know this is something we can do. I know it's simple, but difficult. So I'm going to jump back in time to that data piece. Because do you remember when Chrissy was talking about how we had those focus groups with the women after the study? And we asked them what their experience was like with first breath and with striving to quit? So she told you what they thought of us. And she was like, don't worry about what they thought of you, because we're going to talk about it at our statewide meeting. But I actually wanted to tell them what they thought of you, because they had a lot to say, which is a good thing. We want that feedback. So we said, what was it like between you and your service provider in first breath? And this is what they said to us. I'm going to start with the negative. Do you know what they don't like about working with you? They don't like a lack of connection and a lack of engagement. If they don't feel like they have a rapport with you, if they don't feel like they have a relationship with you, that's when they don't care. And that's when they check out. So think about it. If you're even able to maintain a relationship with these women, you're already doing something correct. Yay! What do they like? They love being able to talk about what's going on in their world. Because as women, who doesn't? I know I love to. That's why they gave me extra time to talk. Women love being able to say, this is what I'm dealing with, in a space where, again, they get to be selfish. What else do they love? People who are non-judgmental. Shaming is huge when you're pregnant and struggling with addiction. Huge. They don't want to feel bad because you know what? They already feel bad. They don't need us to tell them what they're doing wrong. They need us to point out what they're doing right. And the last thing is trying to lift them up. Again, those positive messages. I look at every tiny success as a huge success because it's an opportunity. And I wanted to share this with you because, again, this is what you're doing right today. So, I actually have a case study. I have an example of why we're having this conversation. One of our health educators said, any expertise I bring to the smoking cessation counseling is secondary to showing up and being present with the intention to help. And I have a perfect example of this. There was a woman who was in first breath when she was 3 months pregnant. Guess what? You helped her quit. She was one of your clients. 6 months. At the point that we get her, she's been smoke-free for 6 months. We had her for another year after the baby was born. And here's the thing, she had lots of coping skills. She was doing super great. She didn't have any trigger. She had no urges, no withdrawal symptoms. She appeared completely invulnerable to relapse. Like, you know that star client that you want to put on a pedestal and be like, oh, you're so good at this. That was her. She was so good at this. And then at her last home visit, a year and a half after she's quit smoking, she breaks down crying, to her health educator, and she says, I would not be here if it wasn't for you. And her health educator's like, back it up. What are you talking about? Because again, her health educator hasn't really done anything. She's the one who has the coping skills. She's the one who quit smoking. And she goes, can you explain to me like what you're talking about? And the woman goes, you don't understand. I was convinced I was going to relapse after I had the baby. I was convinced. If you'd asked me a year ago if I would be smoke-free right now, I would have said no way. And she was like, why is that? And she goes, because you were present and you were here with me. That's literally all it took, was just someone showing up to say, you're doing great and you can keep doing great. And again, who are we talking about? We're talking about you. That's the impact that you're having. That's the impact of having someone who cares in your life. And I love it. So really quickly, I'm really curious what you guys are already doing today that works. Because like I said, it's a lot, and we know that. I know that you spend time every day creating space where these women get to talk about their experiences. And I want to know what you're doing to make that possible. And here's the deal. I'm going to ask you guys, just in general, what that is. If you feel like you have all these barriers in place, I don't really want to focus on that, because the reality is that's real too. And I know that. But what are the things you do today that create a space where women can talk? Do you have anything you'd like to share? Anyone? If not, I'm going to call on our health educators in the back. Yeah. So you make time for your clients. The visit is not by the clock. Okay? You take it visit by visit. You're willing to check in on what's happened since the last time, right? Those are really great answers. I love that. But I know that some of us don't have the time for that. When we say we have 3 minutes, we mean 3 minutes. Do we have any other ideas? I mean, I'm the same way. I love that. What else? Being willing to forget the paperwork for 10 seconds and set down your laptop, set down your pen, make that direct eye contact, and then ask a follow-up question. Yes, no, tell me more. I love the idea of getting women to tell stories about their experiences, because that's where they're going to start opening up. Anything else? That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. So trying to equalize it. You're not necessarily above them when we're talking about power or control. You might be a provider, but trying to create a space where they can actually relate to you. I have a really great example of that. I had a provider say to me just the other day, she said, do you know what I do whenever I meet one-on-one to do first breath? I come out from behind my desk and we sit next to each other, because what it does is it creates space between us that's intimate. I had another provider say, I like to share my personal experience because I'm a former smoker and I know what it feels like. And I want them to understand that it's not them versus me, it's us in this together. That was great. Anything else? Those are great answers, you guys. I have a couple of things that I really like to do, open-ended questions. That's a part of motivational interviewing, okay? So instead of asking what's wrong, what happened? Tell me more. Again, that follow-up question. Another thing I really like to do, and again, this might not work for everyone, but I like to try and give myself a couple of minutes, up to 5 at the very beginning before we do paperwork, right? To check in. How are you doing today? And whenever one of my women says, I'm fine, I know what that means. When I say I'm fine, what I'm saying is I don't want to deal with it, shield. So I automatically know something's going on. So whenever my women say that, do you know what I say? Are you really? That's it. Are you really? And 100% of the time, my women disclose. They word vomit on me what's really going on, because I've given them space to do it. And again, if you don't have time, that's understandable. But now she's talking, and it's going to be much easier for me to figure out what's going on in her life today that's making it hard for her to quit. Those are awesome answers. Thank you so much for sharing. So now we're going to get into the meat and the potatoes of this presentation. Because here's the deal. Talking about stressors and talking about strengths can lead to coping. That's what this is about. So we're going to start with talking about stress, because it is a part of our lives, and it's a big part of our lives. So in my world, there's a really big difference between day-to-day stress and major life stressors. I believe that there's a continuum when it comes to stress. And here's the thing. If I'm going to make a plan when it comes to upcoming stress or unexpected stress, like if we're planning ahead for when you go back to work, and work is a trigger. When you plan ahead for, oh man, I have to spend Christmas with my family and they all smoke. If we're going to make a plan for this, it's helpful to figure out what type of stress it is. And there, in my opinion, are 3 types of stress. There are different words for it, but the ones I use are minor stress, moderate stress, and severe stress. Minor stress is, I just had a baby and I haven't slept in days. And you know what, that's a real thing, okay? And it might be hard to overcome in some ways, but it's not going to be like that forever. It's going to be really short, right? Moderate stress is something that's been stressing you out for a while. I'm moving, and it's terrible, right? The good thing is, though, is you're not going to be moving forever. I mean, if you were, that would be terrible. But at some point, you're going to end up in your beautiful new space, and you'll be home, and there'll be a relief. And then severe stress, that's my baby just died. What do I do? How do I feel? How do I fix it? And like someone said, a big difference earlier was you had talked about the things that we have control over and the things that we don't. And when we're talking about planning for triggers and planning for stress, I find that that has a really big difference on whether or not we can make a plan. Do I have control over it? Let's figure out what we can do today. Do I not have control over it? Is it something that I just need to deal with, that I'm going to have to work through? So I wanted to point this out to you because when we talk about stress, it's not simple. Everyone's stress is different, even if they can fit into these boxes. And so when I have conversations with my women, I like to figure out, is it day-to-day or is it big life? And then we address it based on that. Now we're going to talk about strengths, and this is a really important part of the conversation because talking about a woman's strength is what enables her to build up her confidence in herself and in her quit attempt. Here's the thing. Self-efficacy and resiliency are not just buzzwords. I know people throw them around all the time, but they actually mean something, and they mean something really important when we talk about addiction. Self-efficacy has a 2-part definition. Number 1, it is your belief in the fact that you can create change in your life. For example, do you believe that you can quit smoking? Let's not worry about how you're going to get there, but do you believe that someday you'll be a non-smoker? Number 2, do you believe that you can actually take a step? Can you actually make a change? That's self-efficacy. So for example, if you have a woman who's like, I don't want to quit smoking, and I really don't believe I can, that's an example of someone who does not believe that they can make a change and does not believe that they can get there. And here's my thing with my women. Let's not worry about how we're going to get there. Let's just know that we want to. Like Christy said, it doesn't even matter what their motivation is, as long as they have it. Because once they have it, we can build on it. Resiliency is your ability to recover quickly from misfortune. And here's the thing. Resiliency is a learned trait. It's not inherent. You're not born with it. It's because you experience bad things in life, and you recognize that they're bad things, and you know that you want to create a change. And so you work on it. And the good thing is, this might sound crazy, but the more bad experiences you have in life, the more opportunities you have to build up your resiliency. That can be the benefit of quitting smoking. And I say this because really, what is this entire conversation about? It's about control of self. It's about power and control. It's about knowing that you actually have the ability to make change in your life. We had a woman in our study who said, I have no idea how I'm going to get through tomorrow, but I have confidence in my ability to plan for today. And I was like, that is beautiful. What she's saying is she does not know how she's going to quit. She's not going to do it cold turkey today, but she knows that she can work on being here right now and surviving what's in front of her. And that's important, because as long as we take it step by step, that's how we're going to get there. So now I want to talk about coping, because I really feel like that is the majority of what this conversation is about. And I'm going to throw way more at you than you can probably handle, because I want you to have as many coping skills as possible so you can take them back and give them to your women so they can have as many coping skills as possible. So here's the thing about coping. Completing a goal, any goal at all, will reinforce to her that she is capable of creating change. That is the sustainability of behavior change. 8%, you guys. And so what we want to do with these women is we want to help them figure out what to do today. A client of mine said to me, And smoking was like her best friend, and it always had been. She'd been smoking since she was 14, and you know what? Cigarettes were there for her during the best of times and during the worst of times. Cigarettes never shamed her. Cigarettes made her feel good. She said, who else in my life is as reliable as a cigarette? She goes, and you're asking me to give that up. What am I supposed to do instead? And you know what? That is a valid question. I asked her, what does it feel like? And she said, I feel like my best friend is dying. She actually went through the grieving process of giving up a cigarette. This is the same woman where at our home visit, when I was first invited in, she invited me in because she wanted to withdraw from the study. She was done. She was done. She did not believe she could quit smoking. She had really low self-efficacy. You know what she said to me? I have tried and I have tried and I have tried and I have failed. And I don't want to fail anymore. I'm tired of failing. How can you ask me to do that, right? And I asked her more questions like, why do you fail? And she goes, I have no coping skills. And I was like, excuse me? Why do you believe that? Because you can tell it's an internalized belief at this point. She goes, my counselors told me I have no coping skills. My friends tell me I have no coping skills. I have nothing. How is she supposed to give up her best friend if she has nothing to replace it with? And so, of course, me being me, I'm like, let's find a roundabout way to have this conversation. So I say, have you ever wanted to smoke a cigarette but you didn't? Oh, of course. What did you do instead? Because whenever someone says to me, I have no coping skills, I'm stuck. You have coped previously. What'd you do instead? And she said, oh, well, I grabbed my adult coloring book. And I'm like, wait. What? You have an adult coloring book? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, don't you think that's a coping skill? And she goes, no, it's just coloring. And I was like, oh, have you ever wanted to smoke a cigarette and did something else instead? And she goes, oh, yeah, totally. I'll play with my baby. I'll call someone up on the phone. I like to journal. I go to talk therapy. I love to take walks. And I'm like writing all this down super fast. And she finishes and I'm like, do you realize that you just listed 6 coping skills in like 30 seconds? And she goes, wait, really? Those are coping skills? And I'm like, well, are they things that you have done instead of smoking? Yes. Ta-da. I didn't have to tell her what she was doing that was working. She told me. Between that visit and our next visit, she went from 20 cigarettes a day to quit. And I'm going to tell you, I did nothing except show up and be present because she's the one who had the coping skills and she's the one who made the decision to quit smoking. That's the impact of having coping skills. So let's get into it. Here's what I want to do now, is I want to teach you a way to reframe this conversation. Because I had a service provider say to me, I would just really like to figure out a different way to approach it for those clients that it's hard to get there, right? And I was like, cool, I have a way to do that. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a minute and think about a stressor that you have in your life currently. And I figure as service providers, we have them. As women, we have them, okay? In fact, you might have like 100 in mind already. If you cannot think of one, or you think of one that you wouldn't be comfortable sharing with someone, then make one up, okay? So now I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that stress. We're going to figure out how to do this. So number one, I'm going to explain to you exactly how this works in terms of reframing the conversation. Then I'm going to have a volunteer come up and I'm going to show you how to do it, okay? And then I'm going to have you guys break into groups of 2. One of you is going to be a counselor, one of you is going to be a client. And you guys are going to have this conversation between you. And we're going to do it in 3 minutes because I'm going to prove to you that you can, okay? Because if that's all the time you have, this is something you can do during that time. Just like the coping skills I'm about to give you, you can do during that time. So with that, number one, so your client is going to tell you what their stressor is. The counselor is going to acknowledge that that is a barrier in their life. Because you know what, it's real for them, so let's acknowledge that it is. Because it proves that we're listening, it's reflective. Number 2, I'm going to ask them what they have done in the past to deal with it, because obviously they have. They've survived to this point. I want to know what's worked. I want to figure out one coping skill they already have. And then I want to explore options and make a plan. This is the point where I want to push them, I want to encourage them to try something new. And I love to challenge my clients. I really want them to work on it because if we're trying to get them to increase coping skills, then every single time we're going to try something new. So this is the conversation that you're going to have with them, and you're going to create a plan with 3 ideas of what they can do to deal with it. So with that, I'm going to ask for a volunteer if there's anyone who'd be willing to come up and share a stress that they have so we can talk through this. Does anyone have a stress they'd be willing to share? If not, I'm going to make my boss do it, and she really doesn't like that. Anyone? I need a single volunteer from anyone. Otherwise, Chrissy, you got to come up. I told you she doesn't like it. Unless any of the other staff wants to do it. Is there anybody else? All right. Chrissy, come on up. It's like free counseling. Come on, don't worry about it. Okay, so Chrissy, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you to share your stressor. Okay, and then I'm going to acknowledge it. Okay. All right? And then I'm going to ask you what you have done in the past. Nope, come this way. We're going to do it over here. And then I'm going to ask you what you have done in the past to deal with it. Okay? And then we're going to explore options, and we're going to make a plan that has 3 different things that you can try. Something that you've done before and something new that you'd be willing to explore. How does that sound? Okay, great. So what is the stress that you're dealing with in your life right now?
I can't sleep.
You can't sleep. Okay. Now, is this an issue of falling asleep or staying asleep?
It's both, but it's the falling asleep that is the most troublesome.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't feel like you're getting enough sleep?
Right.
Okay. Have you ever done anything to try and deal with this in the past?
Yes.
Yes.
Many things.
Have there been things that you have tried that have worked?
One thing that helps somewhat is not drinking caffeine, a lot of caffeine.
Oh, great. Is there a certain point in time, like, are you saying you don't drink caffeine at all that day, or is there a certain point in time that you have to stop drinking caffeine?
Limit the amount and stop by like 9 in the morning.
So you have to limit the amount, and you really can't have any caffeine past the a.m.
Right.
Okay. So that's something that you know that works for you. So no tea at 5 o'clock at night.
Right.
Okay. Have you tried things that have not worked for you?
Yes. Lots of medications.
Okay.
And I've tried like yoga and stuff like that.
Okay. So you've tried physical activity, grounding into your body, and you've tried pharmaceutical medication.
Yes.
Now here's the thing. Am I going to then push her to remedicate if she knows that that's something that doesn't work for her? Probably not, because that's probably not going to be effective. Okay? So then is there anything you can think of that you would be willing to try when it comes to being able to get a better night's sleep?
Well, a lot of it is just being anxious and like thinking about stuff at night. So if there's a way to like get that out of my brain, that would be good. But then I have kids and work and that sort of stuff.
So you need some way to kind of take what's out of your brain and learn to calm it down. Okay. Could I offer you some suggestions of different things that you could try?
Yes.
Did you notice how I asked her permission to give her suggestions? Now here's the thing about giving her suggestions. I don't want to inundate her brain. Do you know how I'm going to throw way too much at you? I don't mean her. I meant you. When it comes to her, I'm only going to give her like 3 strategies. Okay? Because we're just trying to find a couple of things that she'd be willing to try. So knowing that, when it comes to being able to calm your mind down, have you ever tried anything like journaling?
I have in the past, but I haven't tried it in a while.
In the past, when you used it, did it help to calm your mind at all?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Is that something that you would maybe be willing to try doing before bed if you need to just get it out?
Yeah, that probably help.
Okay.
Yeah, I would do that.
What about deep breathing?
I do, but then I worry that I'm doing it wrong and it makes me more stressed out.
Okay. All right. Now, this is an opportunity for me to come in, and I could either try to teach her other ways to deep breathe, but did you notice how she was like, well, I'm not really comfortable with that? I might not push at this point, okay? Because I'm trying to find things that she's comfortable with and that she's willing to try, okay? So at this point in time, do you have any other suggestions for things that you think that you could try that maybe you haven't tried before?
I think the journaling is a good one. I like to read before bed, and sometimes I read things that are too exciting, and then I think about I'm a nerd. I don't know.
No.
So maybe if I chose something a little more boring or that I wasn't into
Okay.
as much, then
Great.
that might like turn off my brain instead of like, I don't know, being excited about what I'm reading. Wuthering Heights.
Now, here's my question for you. Do you have something that you could read that is boring enough that it wouldn't excite your brain? Do you own things like that?
I have lots of textbooks in my basement.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now, because here's the thing, is I need to make sure that she has access to the resources and the tools to do it. Okay? For example, if I'm talking to someone and they're like, well, I want to start coloring, do they own a coloring book? Do they have the ability to access one? I don't want to give her a tool that she can't use because she doesn't have access to it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to reflect this back onto her because I want to make sure that we know exactly what we're going to do here. So in order to try and get a better night's sleep, you're going to limit the amount of caffeine you have in a day and not drink after 9 a.m. Okay, because you know it's going to wake you up and keep you awake. You know that journaling is something that's worked for you in the past and something you'd be willing to try to do again. And reading is something you love to do and can stay a part of your routine, but now we need to read those boring books versus the super exciting ones. Is this something that you would be willing to work on between now and the next time I see you?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay. Do you think this will work?
We'll give it a shot.
Great. Now here's the thing. It might not work. That's okay. It doesn't mean she failed. It means we figured out what didn't work. And that's going to give us an opportunity to then push to figure out what could work. So with that, I want to thank you, Chrissy. That is an example of how to reframe the conversation. So what I'm going to have you do now is I'm going to have you break into teams of 2. One of you is the counselor, one of you is the client. The client is going to say out loud what their stress is, counselor, acknowledge it, ask them what they've done to deal with it in the past, and then I want you to make a plan. Something that they've done that's worked, and something that new that they'd be willing to try. I want 3 ideas, okay? You guys have 3 minutes, break into groups of 2. Did you guys at least get a feel for what this feels like? Because that's what I wanted for you. I wanted you to have a different structure from what you might be used to and an opportunity to just get a feel for it. Did that work? Okay, great. Well, then I'm going to move on because I really love when people have options. Because if you don't have options, what choice do you have? And I'm the type of person where I love my bag of tricks. I love having a toolkit by my side so that if I need to come up with ideas, I can. So now I want to give those to you. And I want you to steal them and take them back to your organization and use them, okay? So if you were at our statewide meeting and you were in a presentation that I did, you may have heard this before. Guess what? You're going to hear it again. Repetition is a good thing, but more importantly, I really believe in this resource. So a show of hands, how many of you use action plans today? Yay! Okay, first of all, that was the best response of any session we've had so far. Almost everyone raised their hand. I'm so happy. Go Milwaukee. How many of you use any type of a goal-setting tool at all, period? Again, almost everyone in the room. Fantastic. So this is probably going to be old information for you then because you're already the experts on it, but for the few people who didn't raise their hands, I want them to understand how this works, okay? So if you use an action plan that does not look like this one, guess what? It's okay. This is my action plan, and I use it for a really specific reason. So an action plan is about setting a goal, and we know that goal setting is key to behavior change. It gives them something to work on. It gives them something to push towards. I believe in it. We know it's effective. So when it comes to my goal setting tools, I like this one because it has a long-term goal and a short-term goal. Because I have a lot of women who are like, I want to quit someday, but I don't know how to get there. And I don't want them to get stressed out about the how to get there. Because I get women who are like, even thinking about quitting smoking stresses me out, and then I want to smoke. So let's try to remove that barrier. So literally, at our very first appointment, I'm like, what do you want? Do you want to quit? Do you want to cut down? Because these women already have an idea coming in. And I know that we don't have a lot of time together. We have 6 months. We have a year. So what is our big picture goal? And that's what we figure out. But then, I don't want to get stuck on that. Let's not worry about how to get there. I want to figure out what we're going to do today based on the stressors that are in her life today. And you know what? That might change, and that's okay, because we're going to take it day by day. So what are you trying to work on today? Are you going to quit cold turkey? Probably not. Are you going to work on cutting down? By how much? Let's set a goal. And here's the thing. They need to have 3 ideas, 3 strategies for me. And I always make them use something they've done before that's worked and something new that they'd be willing to try. And I love to push my women. I love it. For example, I have a lot of women who will get down to the point, because of you, where they will be smoking like 1 cigarette a week, like a couple puffs, a couple days. They'll go days in a row without smoking. And this became an issue for me because they weren't ready to give up that last cigarette, right? So I went to Chrissy and I said, what do I do for these women who are so close, but they're not ready? And she goes, well, have you had them practice quit? And I'm like, excuse me? What are we talking about? A practice quit is the opportunity for you to try to quit. It's not even necessarily about setting a quit date, because here's the thing, you're not really trying to quit, you're just practice quitting. And then if you smoke a cigarette afterwards, guess what? Not a big deal. You didn't fail because you weren't trying to quit. You were just practice quitting. Because what you're doing is you are encouraging them to push themselves to go a period of time without a cigarette. Hours, days, weeks. And then even if you do slip and you do smoke, don't worry about it, because remember, you're just practice quitting, not a big deal. But then the next time, I'm going to push you to try and go even further without one. Because the thing about withdrawal, the thing about cravings, is that they're temporary and they do go away. And the longer that you can push yourself between cigarettes, the lower that they get. So I really push myself, oh, you're having a craving, can you go the 6 to 10 minutes without and use a coping skill instead? Because if you can do it one time, you can do it again. And that's what I want to encourage my women to think about. So push them to try new things, because again, we want to increase those coping skills by even one. And then the other big things for me is I always set a timeline on it. For me, I do it visit to visit. That way I don't have to worry about dates, because I know I'm going to see you the next time I see you. So what are we going to work on between today and tomorrow? And don't worry if we fail, because you know what? If you don't get it right this time, it's fine. We're just practicing. And we're going to learn from the experience. And here's the thing about me, I don't even give my women the option of doing action plans. I used to be like, oh, do you want to set a goal? Now I'm like, nope, you have to. Maybe it's the same goal you had last time with new ideas. That's fine. Maybe it's something even more aggressive. It's up to you. But we're going to work on it step by step. The last thing is, so we have our strategies, we have a time frame, right? And, oh, I want you to write it down. This is really important because there's a connection between our brain and our hands. And when you write things down, it reinforces it. And it helps you remember. Plus, physically being able to see it is a great reminder. My women will like hang it on their fridge. And then when they succeed, they're like, yay, I did great. And when they didn't, I'm like, don't worry, we're learning. So action plans, if you don't use them, I really encourage you to try, because it can feel so good to accomplish a goal and see it. Again, that's something that builds confidence. Yeah.
Maybe the next time we redo our workbooks, we could make the inside cover or the outside cover an action plan.
I love it. I don't think they heard you in the back, but I will share that information. So the ability to make the action plan on the inside of your workbook so it's right there. Or a page or anything. Yes, I love it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few minutes to give you guys some additional ideas. And again, these are really good for the clients who are stuck, for the clients who have quit over and over and over again, or for the clients who don't know where to begin. And I want you to know something. This is really important. We know, so I learned this in a different training. We know for a fact that as long as you keep trying to quit, someday you will. The only women who don't quit smoking are the ones who aren't trying and the ones who give up. So when I have a woman who's like, I've tried a dozen times and I failed, I'm like, that's great, because you're still trying. And you should be proud of yourself that you are. That's amazing. Feel good about that. That's an accomplishment. You didn't give up. And you know what? You probably learned from the experience, so let's figure out what you learned. Even if it's only that certain nicotine replacement therapies don't work for you. Guess what? They don't work for everyone. That's okay. Are you willing to try a different one that maybe will? That's a learning moment. So I want you guys to look in your folder. You have 2 handouts for me. One of them is called Coping Skills Toolkit, and the other one is called 101 Ways to Manage Cravings. And I wanted you to have both of these for different reasons. So Coping Skills Toolkit, this is what you and I are going to go over right now. I'm going to teach you how to use these, because I'm the type of service provider where if I don't know how it works and I haven't tried it, I'm not going to be teaching it to somebody else. I like to have it in practice. The 101 Ways to Manage Cravings, this is for you to share with your clients. So you could go and tape it to your filing cabinet, but really, this is what I like to do. So these are the types of tools that you teach them in 2 minutes. This is for that client who's going, I'm stuck and I need ideas. And so I'm like, oh, you want to have a homework assignment? Take this home. And I want you to take something and I want you to circle all the things on here that you've tried and that you like, or something on here that sounds good to you and you'd be willing to try. And then bring it back in and let's have a conversation about it. This is a great way to explore coping skills. We don't even have to do it in the time we're together. Just take it home, look at it, get some ideas. And then let's use that as a jumping off point for a conversation about coping. But I'm not going to focus on that. That's just something, take it, use it with your clients. Instead, we're going to focus on these things that we can teach them. This is for your bag of tricks. This is for when someone is stuck, you have 2 minutes, and you need to give them an idea, okay? So let's start with the 3-part self-talk exercise. Do you guys know what self-talk is? Self-talk is the internal dialogue that you have with yourself. It's your personal tape recorder. Here's the thing about self-talk, is a lot of it is actually based on what we are exposed to as children and the messaging that we receive. Now here's the problem. As women, we receive negative messaging. That's why there's things like body shaming. We feel bad about ourselves. We feel like failures as mother. We feel insecure, okay? The good news is we actually have the ability to change the voice inside of our heads. Because you might hear a negative message 100,000 times, right? But we can change that. Even one time. So this is an activity that I created specifically for those women who know that they want to change the narrative. For example, a woman who's going, I don't feel confident that I can quit. We want her to feel super confident. We want her to be like, yes, I'm going to get there someday. Might not be today, but someday I'll be a non-smoker. I want her to get to that point. Now, I have heard some people go, oh, just write that message on a Post-it, stick it on your bathroom mirror, and say it out loud to yourself every morning. I don't really like that. It can make me really uncomfortable to look in the mirror and do that. So this is an activity designed for people who don't like pre-written messages, but who need that mindfulness, who need to check into themselves. So we're going to practice it right now. I want you to put your hand over your heart, because what we're doing right now is we're grounding into our bodies. We're being present, okay? And then you acknowledge that this is a moment of suffering, because you know what? It's real. This is a part of being alive. People suffer. But the good thing is it's temporary. It's not going to feel like this forever. And then, and this is the important thing, I want you to ask yourself, what do I need to hear right now? And if you really tune in and you ask yourself that, guess what? You're going to have an answer. I can get through this. It's going to be okay. Breathe. And then say it to yourself. And say it to yourself as many times as you need to. Now here's the deal. If you wouldn't say it to your best friend, if you wouldn't say it to your mother, don't say it to yourself. It has to be loving. It has to be compassionate. We don't want to reinforce the negative self-talk. We want to reinforce the positive self-talk. So I really love this activity. And again, 2 minutes. And you can do it anywhere. People don't even need to know you're doing it. You can be sitting at the dining room table and put your hand on your knee to ground yourself and check in. People don't even need to know that that's what you're doing. The next one is deep breathing. Deep breathing is one of the best coping skills that you can have when it comes to quitting smoking, because think about it. What is a part of smoking a cigarette? It's breathing. That's a huge part of it. And we know for a fact scientifically that when you get stressed out, it floods your body with stress chemicals. And the problem is you can't reset the stress chemicals until you go to bed at night. So what are we supposed to do between now and bedtime? This is a great way to deal with that, because we can actually lower the stress chemicals and we can start to control them through deep breathing. Because if you breathe for long enough consciously, your body will calm down. You cannot stay in a heightened state of panic if you're breathing. You can't do it. You can't, okay? So I want to teach you guys this, because I have women who are like, I've tried deep breathing and it doesn't work for me. And I'm like, well, maybe you tried a version that didn't work for you. Because there are different ways to do it. I know that I was encouraged to do like the 4-7-8. Inhale for 4, hold for 7, exhale for 8. That doesn't work for me at all. I'm a deep breather. It feels awkward. It's not right for my body. So I created a list of some really simple ones that you can use with your clients. And I want to tell you right now, I wanted to give you like a dozen of them, but my boss is like, no, keep it simple. But this is for that client where you're trying to encourage them to learn how to deep breathe and to start using this. I like to give them the whole list and say, take this home and try all of them. And don't just try it once, because you know what? It's going to feel weird the first time you do it. Any new coping skill is going to feel weird at first. You need to try it 3 times. And if by the 3rd time it doesn't feel right, that's okay, because you know what's right for you. But try all of them. And you know what? There's a really good chance that one of these things might work for them. And then the next time they come in, ask them about it. How were the breathing exercises? Did any of them work for you? So really quickly, I'm going to take a moment to explain exactly how these work. So number 1, I have counting breath. That's where you pick a number. My number is 5. So what I'm going to do is an inhale and an exhale is going to be to the count of 1. So inhale and exhale. That's 1. I'm going to do it 4 more times. And you know what? If I haven't calmed down by then, I'm going to do another 5. Because maybe I'm really stressed and I need an extra minute. Number 2 is an equal breath. That's where you set a number and you're going to inhale to that number and exhale to that number. It's about being in control and being mindful of your breathing. So I'm going to pick 6. I'm going to inhale for 6. I'm going to exhale for 6. Okay. Number 4 is belly breath. This is about getting your diaphragm involved. This is about deep breathing. Okay, so I'm going to put my hand on my belly. I'm going to put my hand on my chest. Because here's the thing. We breathe normally. Like trying to teach people to breathe sounds really silly. It's like, oh, but we already breathe. Yeah, but typically when we breathe, it's really shallow and it just makes your chest come up and down. Deep breathing is where your belly comes out. Okay, so when I inhale, my belly needs to come out. If my belly doesn't come out, I'm not breathing deeply enough and I need to try even harder. So I'm going to inhale and exhale. It's really good for grounding into yourself. And the last one is skull shining breath. I know that sounds really weird. I did not name it. These breathing techniques have existed for thousands of years. Okay, skull shining breath is where you slowly inhale through your nose and you sharply exhale through your mouth. And it really actually wakes your brain up. It's a really fun one to do. So again, I'm giving these to you because I really encourage you to encourage all of your clients to try it. Find one deep breathing exercise because again, this is that perfect thing where you're taking that time out and you need to calm down, take a few deep breaths. It will help your body. The reality is, so I'll give you an example. My mother quit smoking when I was a kid because my family doctor said to her, your child has asthma because of you. It's your choice. And it totally freaked my mom out. And she was like, I need to quit smoking immediately. She felt so guilty. And she went home and she had no idea how to do it. And so she grabbed her lighter and she grabbed a pen. And she followed through on her ritual. She went outside. She fake lit the pen and she stood outside and she smoked it. And she took deep breaths. And you know what? It helped her relax. It gave her a break, let's be honest, from me. Okay? And it helped calm her down. And you know what? It felt so good that not only did she never smoke a cigarette again, she kept fake smoking. Because in reality, she needed the 5-minute break. She needed to breathe. She just didn't need to do it with a cigarette. And that's something that I give to my clients all the time. When they're like, I need something else, I'm like, have you tried fake smoking a cigarette? I have a client who uses a carrot when she does it, and then afterwards she eats the carrot and she lost weight on top of it and was like, yay, I quit and lost weight, huzzah. That's great. Anything that gets them breathing, literally anything that gets them breathing is great. The last one I have for you, so if you want to go into your handout, it's called Snap. Oh, Snap. Okay, so I love Snap. Snap, for the record, is one of my favorite activities. Snap is for when you're dealing with unsupportive people in your life. So for example, the people in your life who don't support your quit attempt, or they still smoke around you, it can really be anyone. Okay, this is a perfect exercise for that. So number one is set boundaries. Here's the deal. You don't have to stay around people who make you feel bad. You don't have to stay around people who are smoking around you. You have the ability to say, no, I don't want to do this anymore. So if you're at a family barbecue and someone starts smoking around you, get up and go for a walk. I tell my women, walk around the block. Just take a break. Take a time out. It's okay to do that. You don't have to expose yourself. You can't control their behavior. You do have control over yours. Number two, neutral conversations. A great part of setting a boundary is being able to say, I don't want to smoke anymore. I'm trying to quit. Don't smoke around me. Don't offer me cigarettes. Okay? Now here's the deal. If you're like mid-fight with your husband, that is not the right time to try and have that conversation. The time to have that conversation is over dinner, when you guys are in a good space to have that conversation. Number three, avoid negative and unsupportive people. I actually had a woman who changed her friend network because she realized they weren't really supportive of her. They weren't positive influences. They were the people that she'd always known, but they made her feel bad about herself. And when she saw that she had other options, she didn't want to do it anymore. And I'm not saying, that's the extreme. I'm not saying women have to give up these people, but you do have the ability to walk away even if it's temporary, if that's what's right for you right now. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow, but for right now, what's right today? And the last thing, again, I'm a pusher of this. Practice your breathing exercises because that is a part of smoking and it will help you get through that moment, even if it's just that moment. So in summary, caring relationships, that is the power of you. Number 2, discuss their stressors. Just be open to it. Because there are things that they are dealing with. These are the root causes of what make them want to smoke. The good thing about that is then we can look at the strengths that they already have and that they've already used to overcome those things, and we can use that in their quit attempt, and we can use that to have conversations about their coping strategies, both what has worked and new things that they're willing to try, because that's what we want to push them to do. We want to push them to find something else. In summary, I want to share this quote with you because I felt like this really summed it up. Like, at the end of the day, this is what it's all about for me. When it comes to supporting people and making behavioral changes, it is wise to be flexible when it comes to defining success. Tough changes are often made in excruciatingly small steps, but even when the smallest of steps is acknowledged, often the courage and motivation to take the next increases. And that's what this conversation is all about. So with that, I want to say thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it back over to Chelsea.